So hi, thanks for
Okay,
having me. I appreciate it. I enjoyed the second season a lot. So to start out, Kyler, can you talk about how Kat sort of continues to follow the thread of Jacob this season, sort of tease where that's headed?
absolutely. I first want to say thank you for joining us from space.
Oh, yes, sir.
Really greatly appreciate it. But here on Earth, um, we pick back up in season two directly from the last bit of season one, where Kat has this moment with Dell and she says, I think I know what happened to Jacob. So I think the audience will be really happy that we're not just kind of like coming back and going like, oh, so 3 years later. It's like, no, we pick right back up. And so I love the fact that she starts piecing all these things together, and pretty much right off the bat we see her trying to, no pun intended, but like dive right into the whole story.
Pun intended.
Punded tended. um so and then that's the through line of the whole season for season two for Kat. So going back into the 1800s and finding out what that means and how that affected their current circumstances and how Jacob is missing and what that looks like. Where did he go? And, understanding in the very beginning of the season when we see that white witch that's running through the forest, and then we see at the end that it's Kat, then where did that come from? And present day Kat doesn't actually even know. So it's going back into time to figure out how the origins are now coming to fruition.
Makes sense. Now, Evan, Elliot obviously made the comment at the end of last season that he wanted to, stop being a spectator in his own life, and he went off. But do you think that he thought through that by him leaving, that he's actually not? I mean, he's not getting what he wanted. He could be there with her, and he left, and he's upsetting Alice. Can you sort of talk a bit about that?
Oh yeah, like Elliot is a scientist. He's not a fortune teller, right? So he doesn't know the future. He doesn't know how it's going to go, and is at the edge of his limits. And I think it's a very brave choice that he makes at the end of season one to kind of go it alone, especially when he seems about to get what he's always wanted. And so I think it's kind of it's a choice that it almost kind of came blurting out of him, and he realized he didn't have any alternative. And then in season two, he has to figure out what that actually means. And also, when you make a strong choice like that and you go off, in a way, if you come back as the prodigal son, you kind of have to earn that choice and defend that choice. And so Elliot is a little bit stuck between having made that choice and the dawning realization that maybe that might have been a mistake. And how does one actually progress through the journey of self-love? It's not a choice one can make. It's an activity. It's a journey. So we see Elliot flounder a little bit, and that's great because we'll see through a lot of the cracks, and we'll get to know the heart of the character really well. And through what we know through 1999, when we get to see David Webster as young Elliot again, and there's just some great illumination that I think audiences are really going to love, and maybe Kat will too. Maybe.
Mm.
Kyler, you obviously travel separate from Alice this season. Is that going to at all drive a wedge between the two of you? Not because you were able to do it together before, and we don't know how much they're going to tell each other and how that's going to happen. So can you talk about that? Can that pull them back apart?
Well, a little, yes, it can. In moments, it does, just because Kat is so protective of her daughter. And obviously, like what we come to see the very first time you see Alice pulled through the pond, it is not a pleasant experience. It is, you are just sucked around and like thrown all over the place, and it's a vortex, and then you show up and you got to climb you relax.
Yeah. No.
You got to climb those rocks, and the water's cold and all the things. And so you're such a jerk. So she's always going to be protective and concerned that something like that would happen again to Alice. And because they've gone through all of this, like some pretty harrowing moments that they've experienced together in the past, obviously with Colton's death and the car crash, and you see all this really heavy stuff. I mean, you don't want your kid to have to go through that and to see those kind of things. But at the same time, Alice has gone back and found all this really beautiful information, and she's been able to really understand her mom and her grandma and that family dynamic. So she wants it. it's a bit of a push and pull because she wants her to be able to have these wonderful moments and discoveries, but she does not want her to have the bad stuff. And you can't have one without the other. Right. So sometimes in Kat's protectiveness, it's not just because she doesn't want her daughter to get her, not just because she doesn't want her daughter to get hurt, but it might be because she doesn't want her daughter to see certain things that could taint her view again of her mother and maybe, some other folks.
Who knows? Who can say? But it's also interesting in the way that reflects on Del and Kat's relationship as well, by the same token. You know what I'm saying?
So Elliot obviously does not like that they time travel and does not necessarily agree with it. But I have to ask, especially as an adult Elliot, if he could go back even against all his advice, do you think he would at all? Or do you think that he just would not want to touch it?
It's hard to say. I like Elliot as a scientist, I think has a mandate to be responsible, right? And there is inherently nothing responsible about jumping into a pond that's going to send you maybe to any other point in time ever. So I think by that token, I think he's pretty against it, but he is also in the quest for knowledge as well. So who knows? He might not be able to, at the end of the day,
if given the opportunity,
be able to avoid it. It's one of those things that I don't think you would know that about yourself until it was right in your face. Yeah. And but I think that what's cool about the pond is that since it's an unreliable device, meaning that sometimes you can travel, sometimes you can't, it will send you where you need to go, things like this.
Maybe not where you want to go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that because of that, the pond has limitless different opportunities for different types of storytelling. So with a show like this, with a show like The Way Home, you never know what's going to happen. So anything is possible.
That makes sense. Now, both of you have the younger versions of yourself on the show. You even mentioned that. Did you work with those actors to kind of become the same character at all? Did you, talk to them about that and how you were playing your version for both of you?
Okay. You want to go?
You go.
No, you.
No, I insist.
Because we pick up Kat all these years later, and she's now become such a different version of who she was when she was a teenager. Alex Hook, who plays young Kat, she's fantastic, such a lovely person, but amazing. What an incredible performer. So we didn't necessarily talk about all the nuances of the characters and what that would look like because they changed so much. And so it was like a great fresh opportunity for her to create this character that was so loving and vivacious and someone who was positive and was so well loved and protected in a sense that she kind of got to make that her own. Because when we pick up on Kat later, yes, there's similar characteristics, but this is a woman who's now gone through having a child and now she's getting a divorce. She just got fired. She's had 20 years not speaking to her mother. Like, she's hardened in some ways, but there's still like that vivaciousness. Yeah.
I'll allow it.
You'll allow. Thank you. She still has that tenacity that's there, but it's just a whole different experience. But the one thing that we did specifically talk about was something that I'm so grateful for, that we had the opportunity to show in a character, especially on a network like Hallmark, because it can be such a niche audience. To show something that really represents people who don't like to talk about it. My character has panic attacks. And so we come to see that the first time we see that is when Kat is an adult. And so when Alice is gone, she gets thrown right into these kind of somewhat violent panic attacks. And so we see that then, and we were given the opportunity, or Alex was given the opportunity to show the very first panic attack that Kat ever had. And I have them in my own life, so I know what they look like firsthand. And so the ones that Kat has in the show as the adult are like a replica of what happens to me. So to have those conversations and to be able to bring forth something like that to an audience in general, I know is very appreciated. We've heard from, the audience that anything that we've dealt with grief, mental health, or any of that really struck a chord with our audience. And Alex was super, super dedicated to bringing that same quality to what that would look like in a teenager. Because I mean, you're still trying to figure out who the heck you are and what that looks like. So we took our time for that particular moment. And then I get to just watch her make all these wonderful choices as she was moving along as well.
Yeah. All right. Well, yeah, I do think that's an important thing. So I'm glad that you guys got to do that. Well, thank you for your time. I appreciate it. Like I said, really enjoyed season 2. Looking forward to seeing the rest of the season. We've only seen the beginning.
I'm like, wait, what?
Yeah, the
Thank you
first
so
one.
much.
So looking forward to the rest. All
Thank
right.
you.